Okay, so this is our third episode of the Oregon Grape, and I think it might actually end up being a little bit of a shorter one because we just have like a couple of issues that I thought would be fun to talk about. And then tomorrow we will be interviewing Chris Barnett, who is running for county commissioner. So that will be also coming out next week. So we'll have probably 2 episodes this week, which will be
Sweet.
Cool. But the problems that we're going to go over today is the formation of a fire district in the Josephine County area. And then also we're going to talk a little bit about homelessness and some of the encampments in the area and just kind of what your guys' view is on that and whether you like homeless guys in cages or not, you know. It's kind of our own little border crisis situation here.
Yeah. I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. But in case you guys haven't heard, basically the county has been kind of working on trying to have a fire district for certain areas within the county. So mostly people who have fire service, it's Rural Metro, which is obviously a private organization. They're actually also a national organization based in Arizona, so they're huge. So if you have fire service, it's probably Rural Metro because or at least if you're in the city, you have, city. The city has their own fire district. But if you're out in Williams area, New Hope area, Upper Lower River Road, those areas, you either don't have fire service at all, or you have Rural Metro. So the problem is that's fine if you don't have fire service. You can maintenance your own property and do whatever. You don't have to pay for Rural Metro. The average subscription to Rural Metro, I believe, is somewhere around $200 to $300 to $400, depending on the square footage of your home and that sort of thing.
Per year or month?
Annual. Yeah. So you don't have to have that. You can just take care of your own property. But there is a state ordinance that you are not able to build a new home or develop your home if you don't have a fire district serving you, whether that fire district be private or public. So when Herman Bertsugar, which still forgot, I was on the phone with him the other night. I still didn't ask him how to pronounce his name. But he explained a couple of things about it for me. When he was in the state Senate, he actually worked on getting approved $1.5 million to start a public fire district for the Josephine County area. So there's a lot that goes into that. First of all, the $1.5 million is really more like a startup fund. So it would get things going. Maybe it would pay for the building. I don't know how much a fire truck is. You'd have to detail all that stuff, but it would be the startup. And then there would be an additional tax that would have to be approved by the voters in order to keep that fire district going. So they've tried to do this a few times in the past, and it never went through for a variety of reasons. One is that I think that they tried to suggest something like a $1.80 property tax, which that's $1.80 per $1,000 of your home's value, right? So $1.80 property tax might end up being somewhere around like $600 extra annually for you if you have like the average like median home, which is around like $300,000.
That would bring a lot of money into the county if you did that high of a tax with how many homes are in the county. I wonder what that annual amount would be. That's a lot of money.
Well, that's the thing is I feel like, you would really have to pencil it out, but I feel like that's too much because honestly,
seems like a lot of money.
I don't know if a fire district would need that much money. That was one of the reasons that one of them got shot down in the past, from what I understand. The other thing is that what Herman's kind of complaint was that it wasn't really like the people deciding on this stuff, and what they need is for the people to decide on what areas would be served by the fire district, because the areas that they were sort of looking at is like I said, like Murphy, Jerome Prairie, Williams area, Lower River Road, Upper River Road, Hugo, Merlin. These are the areas that fire district could potentially serve. But these people in these areas need to agree to it, and they need to decide what these districts would be included and what districts would not be included, because they're going to be voting on a tax for it, right? So that's kind of the basis of what everyone's looking at with that thing, just to kind of give people a brief synopsis over it. And, the real question on the board here is, if you want to develop land, if you want to build a home, then you can just subscribe to Rural Metro right now. That's like your option if you want to build a home or develop something different on your property. So I guess the question is, is it worth it to have a publicly funded fire district? Because this is an additional tax on the public, and so you can talk about your return on investment. Like I said, the average Rural Metro subscription is $300, about $300 annually. It's different for different size homes, of course. And if you were to have something that was like not like $1.80 tax on property, but more like 50 cents or something, that would put you around like $140.
Instead of 600.
Well, instead of 600, but also instead of the 300 people pay for Rural Metro.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's just some of the stuff to think about. And so the question really for you guys is like, is this worth it for homeowners? Is it worth it for the community to add this additional tax burden for what they're getting?
I have one thing. When it comes to structure fires and it being something that a fire district deals with, I'm pretty sure, excuse me, I did work for a firefighter over in Medford, and he was explaining to me that the amount of calls they get where they go out and it's actually a structure fire is a really small percentage of the calls that they go out on.
Yeah.
And I wonder what, like you were saying, return on investment. I wonder what the return on investment would be if you have that many people paying X amount dollars on property tax per year and it's going towards an entirely new district. What percentage of homes? Because with new building codes, like really the risk that's to everyone in the county's house around here is wildfire. It's not going to be like a structure fire from old electrical, unless they're moving an old mobile onto a property or something like that. It's like just less common. And then also you have smoke alarms that are now in houses. And I mean, you could have a cooking fire or something like that. Someone leaves a stove on and leaves the house. Something like that, I feel like, is more commonly.
Yeah, who needs Rural Metro when I have a box of baking soda in the back? I'm fine.
A towel, right? No, but it just does make me think about, and then like there was different things in the county I know that went on. I'm kind of ignorant to them, but as far as like new rules on how much area you have to clear from around, I think it's like 100 feet around your house. You have to have, like no dead trees, stuff like that, right? And it's like there's now companies that will go and clean up people's properties, and that's a private, that's not taxed. That's just, hey, you need to take care of your property for the safety of your neighbors, and you have to pay someone if you're not going to do it yourself. I like that because it's not an imposed tax of like, we're going to have the government come and clean up your property, but you have to pay us to do it. It's like, no, clean up your own property, do your own. And then I think about it and it's like, you can have your own fire insurance. You can have, and you can choose not to have fire insurance. I feel like it's, and that might seem kind of like a libertarian view to take, but I don't know if it's necessary to force a tax on people in the county to develop a new fire district unless it's something that the county people are asking for. And then it's a really cool thing if they got the funds for it to help support the startup of it. I think it's a good idea. But obviously it should just be a vote from people who live in the county, right? It should just be, okay, do you feel like you're at risk and that you would benefit from having a district? Out where I live in the Applegate, there's an Applegate Fire District, and I know that they do benefit the community. I know that they get called out on, when someone crashes their car. Applegate Fire District shows up a lot of the times when there's, a power line that comes down and it could potentially start a fire. They're there. So there's benefits to having a fire district in your area.
Well, so first of all, that's one of the things that Herman was talking about. Is he basically wants people to decide this so that they can, so that it can get approved. Because that's why it didn't get approved in the past. Is it just really wasn't like a grassroots thing. But one of the things that you made me think of is that you said something about how. Were you talking about Rural Metro or were you talking about Applegate when you said that it's only like 2% of calls that are actual structure
That was
fires?
actually over in Jackson County. It was a firefighter for the it might have been Rural Metro.
So
I know the fellow's
So
name,
the
but
interesting thing is that you're right that most calls that firefighters get called out on is not actually structure fires. It's medical emergencies or car crashes and stuff. And one of the problems is that if you get in a car crash in a certain area, Rural Metro responds to that, and then you get a bill because they responded to it. Didn't ask them to respond to it. It's just something that they do. I don't know what the agreement is there, but that happened to me once. I was in a car crash. Rural Metro showed up, and then they sent me a bill for like I think it was close to $1,000. I mean, maybe it wasn't that much. Maybe it was closer in like the mid hundreds. But I called them. I was like, "What the hell is this? I didn't ask you guys to come out because I didn't understand how it worked." And they're like, "Yeah, well, that's what happens. We came out, so you got billed." And what ended up happening is that I wasn't the at fault in that situation, and so what happened was the insurance.
What are your thoughts on that, Eddie? I felt like you had something you're thinking about.
I feel like out of everyone here, this fire district affects me least. I'm the only one who lives in the city.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he doesn't get to be a part of this. He's biased.
Yeah.
It's all right. We're going to get into homelessness later. That definitely
really
affects city.
Yeah, that's like right
and
down
I
the
can
street
tell you,
from
because
me.
we're in the city right now, there's like 20 guys out front.
As we're pulling in from getting some food before this, I was saying to the guys, I'm like, man, it seems like every homeless person has a pit bull. As we're pulling into the parking lot, guy going through the dumpster, his pit bull is on a leash next to him. And I'm like, hey,
protection, man.
Some stereotypes are there for a reason.
If you were sleeping on the sidewalk, you would want something.
I would have too.
Big and muscular and mean out there. Yeah.
Yeah, this one is Princess and this one is Cupcake.
Yeah.
Thing one, thing two.
Yeah, man, it's like urban Pokemon out there. They're just sitting there pets after each other to fight. Yeah. What do you think, Andy? Should we be taxing people for a fire district?
Yeah, I think you'd have to really look at what the benefits
might want to get on that
are.
mic a little bit more.
Pull it in.
You'd have to look at what the benefits are of, having a privatized fire force as opposed to, agreeing on a tax rate for the people and having an actual fire district. I know me and Luke live out in the Twigs, so
Yeah.
if we had a fire out in our place, it'd be nice.
Better grab a hose.
Yeah, better grab a hose and that box of baking soda you were talking about.
Yeah, yeah. Keep a couple 5 gallons in the back. Just
mythical baking soda.
I do a lot of flambe cooking, or what is that? Yeah.
So wait, I have a question. When it comes to developing a fire district, would you no longer have rural metro coming out because like in my area, if I got in a car crash out in the Applegate, I don't know. I know Applegate Fire District would probably get called out, but I don't know that rural metro would. So
that's the part that I'm actually not sure on. I'm pretty sure that whatever areas the public fire district was serving, rural metro would no longer be serving those areas.
So then in that case, it could be that people are actually saved money. Probably the people who don't pay property tax.
That's kind of the point that I was getting at, is if you're looking at just dollars and cents. So the thing is property tax is a hard thing to be in favor of in general, because property tax is the type of tax that makes it to where you don't actually own your home, and that's kind of messed up,
It is.
Like in a lot of ways, like, so Oregon is not a big fan of this because it makes you think of California, but in a lot of ways a sales tax is a more appropriate tax than a property tax because it's equal. And
anyone
also,
spending money on groceries, gas.
Yeah, it's non-exclusionary, right? And it's also, if you don't pay your property tax, you lose your home. Like you could have your home paid off, but if you don't pay your property tax, you could lose your home that you own. So do you really own your home if there's a property tax? So it's really difficult when you start talking about a property tax. But if you want to talk about just dollars and cents, like I said, an annual rural metro subscription is somewhere around $300, right? If you could agree on a tax that made your annual expense less than $300, which I feel like is actually pretty reasonable. Even if it was $1 tax,
I don't know.
It would be under $300. So
I don't know if California is a great illustration. I don't know when the last time.
Maybe we shouldn't be using them for any examples.
When is the last time you've bought something there? Because their sales tax sucks.
It's pretty crazy.
What theirs is really high, isn't it? Like 11% or something crazy.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure they also have property tax and they also have income tax. They have tax on anything you can have tax on.
Yeah, I feel like California would tax you just for walking downtown.
They do tax you for breathing.
Yeah,
there's certain
it's
parts
the oxygen
of it.
tax. You haven't heard about the oxygen tax?
I know where my grandmother lives. They came by and they said, we're going to install solar panels. You have to pay us to install these. If you don't, we're going to tax you. And then they installed the solar panels, and they're like, okay, now we're charging you solar panel tax.
Oh, my goodness. Well, it's
so
one
you
of
get
those
taxed if you do and taxed if you don't?
Yeah. It's one of those things. I get what you're talking about with the sales tax for Oregon, because then tourists coming into your state are also paying your taxes that are going to help fund the things in your community.
Yeah.
And also, if you took away the property tax and went in favor of a sales tax, basically made them counter each other, rent prices would go down. Because property tax gets passed on to the renter. At least in some scenarios, it's going to make the cost of living less for people who are just renting, because there's going to be a certain amount of influx of people coming in from outside of the state. Like a lot of our state's revenue is generated off of agriculture and actually like nurseries, like plant starts and stuff like that. It's one of the top things. Same milk is another one of the top things Oregon produces. And so you look at, okay, what in Oregon's making money, and it's not our housing market, because our housing market is so overly priced. And what it is our goods, things that we can sell. And if those things were being taxed by people who are buying them from outside of the state. You'd be bringing outside of the state money in. And I'm not even saying I'm in favor of a sale tax. I'm really just in favor of what could you do to get rid of property tax.
Yeah. No, and actually the thing is I'm not really sure how I feel about a sales tax either. I just thought it was interesting to talk about because it's a much less exclusive tax. It's something that everybody pays. I mean, if you think we're going to talk about homeless later, even homeless would pay into the sales tax. So,
but I just hate doing the math.
Yeah, I don't like doing math either.
Homeschool.
But yeah, it's just interesting.
Hey, public school people don't like doing math either, I hear.
Yeah. There's two versions of homeschoolers. There's the ones who are like super brainy and they graduate college at like
Savants.
14. Or it's just people who are like, nah, our dad just needed us to work at home. And we were that variety.
We were the work from home, yeah.
Yeah, couldn't spare the free labor to send us to public school.
I graduated when I was 12 years old, and by that I mean I stopped doing school when I was...
Yeah, fun fact, you can graduate whenever you want,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting to look at the actual dollars and cents of how if you're currently paying for rural metro, as long as they could agree on a good tax rate, you probably would pay less if they did a public fire district for your area. And even if you're not currently paying for rural metro, you will pay for them if you get in a car accident, you know,
That's
in
crazy.
these areas, and you will pay for them if someone has to come to your home for a medical emergency and you're going to get a bill in the mail from rural metro. So it's something to think about. Like I said, as someone who's not really a fan of a property tax in general, it's hard to like give an opinion on it, you know. But it is something to think about, and on an actual dollars and cents basis, what that would look like.
I'm not saying I would do this, but I wonder if there's something you could have like placed on your property or your vehicle that would be like a DNR, but like not a do not resuscitate, but like a do not rural metro me. Like, do not charge me money. I do not consent to you like coming to fix my vehicle or tow me away.
Rural metro free zone.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not against rural metro. I'm just saying, like, if it were a case where it's like I got in a fender bender and they showed up and I didn't need them there and they were going to charge me.
I have a sign
like
up
a
on my
baby
door
on board sticker.
that says like, please don't send me bills or like taxes.
And that works.
No.
But it makes him feel better. Yeah. Well, and actually the thing is, so I don't know if you guys know this, but rural metro has a total monopoly on the area. So they bought out, I think it was called Country Fire. Or,
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. So here's the real juicy stuff. But yeah, they bought out the only other private fire district in our area. And, you know, the thing is like free markets work great until there's a monopoly. Like that's the only real thing that screws up a free market. And so in a way, I'm not saying that rural metro does do this, but they could price gouge. They could charge you whatever they want because there's no competition.
Like Pacific Power.
Like
Pacific Power has
monopoly here
had
too.
like essentially, from how I understand it, they've had non-price
Bro, I could
gouging
tell you-
restrictions
yeah.
put on them. I know you have
I
stories.
can tell you stories about, okay, I was getting real, I'm going to just like, I need to go off on this. I'm going to vent real quick. I was getting charged so much from Pacific Power, okay? This building that we're in right now, this is like 2,500 square feet, maybe 3,000 square
Humble
feet.
brag.
Okay, yeah. So, but
Maybe
it's
next
a lease.
Maybe
It's a lease.
next
Sorry, it's a lease.
episode we'll film with just candles out.
Yeah.
Turn all the lights off.
So there
Protest.
was like there was months where my power here was less than $100, you know? My power at my house, this is where the humble brag goes away. My house is like maybe 800 square feet. It's a small house, okay? My power bill was like $300. And I called them and I was like, what is going on with this? And they're like, well, we were just like estimating it based off what we thought. Like they have this whole program where they estimate based on that. And I was like, there's no way that I did this much. And so they kind of worked with me 1 month. And then I did a test where I work here all the time. I probably, like I've told you guys, like I maybe go home to sleep. Like that's the only time I'm at my house. So I sleep here sometimes. Maybe I shouldn't tell people that.
Cut
but
that out.
That sounds really more sad than
Yeah,
that.
it does. No, but the thing is I did a test where I literally shut off the power to my house. Okay, I shut off like almost everything. I was like, okay, washer, I left like the fridge on. And the water heater. Those were the only things I left on. I turned off the heat. I would come home and be freezing, and then I would like maybe turn it on in the evening for a little bit, or maybe like plug in a space
Just
heater or something,
picturing
right?
you shivering, getting into bed.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm gonna show those assholes. Like,
Power guys.
Stick it to the man.
Show
dude,
them.
it was still like hundreds of dollars, and I was like, listen, guys, there's no way. Okay, there's just no way.
I don't have the power connection.
So
they've
they have
gone
this
up
weird
like
system.
20% in the last couple of years, something like
They
that.
did raise their prices, and they have this weird system where they like estimate what it was
I
based
think
off
they
something.
take it-
So
Because you
it's-
don't have a
yeah.
smart meter.
I think
They want to punish people who don't have smart
Yep.
meters. That's what it was. Yeah.
I think they take it from like the peak and then they kind of average that out for the whole month.
I think, well,
Something
it was
like
something.
that,
Yeah, I don't know how they do it, but anyways, it was crazy what I was getting.
So
billed.
monopolies. Basically,
Monopolies are bad. Okay?
Basically,
We're coming
if
back.
you only have one person selling something, they determine the price because there's no competitor.
Yeah.
And so, unless you have the government step in and
essentially
say,
what Rural Metro's
hey,
doing.
no price gouging. But when it comes to something like a fire district, you could see over time how they would have some leverage to price gouge.
Yeah.
At least if some authority didn't step in.
Yeah,
I want to
absolutely.
say Pacific Power, for how much they charge, they sure go down a lot.
Okay, so in
That's
my
true.
area, this is something that would be kind of a fun topic to talk about for a second. So,
I
do you
guess
guys
we can
remember
rule out Pacific Power and Rural Metro as future sponsors for the show.
and the Clinton Foundation? Sorry, that maybe I shouldn't say that. I would never commit suicide.
I just want to
Anyways,
make clear I'm very happy. Okay,
okay, so when it comes to, do you guys remember the Paradise Fire that happened in California?
Yeah.
Lots of homes burnt. Well, they blamed that on, a lot of blame was cast on Pacific Power. And so Pacific Power was
For
under
down power
a lot
lines?
of, and they were under a lot of pressure to essentially make sure they had a safe way of dealing with power lines that fell down. Well, now,
you know what I blame on power lines going down? Obese birds, because you see these pigeons outside of out of McDonald's. The
They're eating
power
those
lines
French
weren't
fries.
built to support it.
No, it's true. It's just basically what happened is that now, if there's any danger in the system, if they get feedback that it's interrupted or however it works, right? If they have an interruption of their electricity, they shut off power to that entire area. And if it's dark outside, they do not send someone out. So you are out of power until morning. And so basically what's been happening in my area is whenever there's a little fluctuation or a little thing, you just don't have power for the whole rest of the night.
Yeah.
Which my wife sleeps with a fan
Just
on,
'cause
a little
it's
box
dark
fan.
out?
And when that box fan turns off, she can't sleep. So basically, I'm at a
you-
loss.
do you-
So you think that you're like laying there in bed like, we're like,
Do you get a little palm frond?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, start making fan noises.
That's
Anyways,
crazy.
so it's
That's an
interesting.
interesting
That's
fact.
how.
So, breaking news: Pacific Power employees afraid of the dark.
No, and really it's not their fault because it makes sense because they're like, okay, if you're going to blame us for like this huge loss of life, property, and infrastructure, right? It's like one of those things where they go, okay, fine, we'll just shut off the power. We'll just shut it off whenever there's maybe a danger.
The big
like a
monopoly
good-
corporation needs much defending from us.
No,
Yeah.
but maybe the guy who would be going out there. I mean, it could be scary going out there at dark to fix the power.
Yeah,
Yeah, they could be
the CEO
possums.
is just at home like those jerks of the Oregon Grape.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyways, we can move on from the fire district thing, but I just thought that was some interesting stuff to consider. So if anybody is in those sort of areas that we mentioned, the Murphys, Williams, New Hope, Lower Upper River Road, Merlin, those kind of areas, and you're interested in the fire district thing, there was going to be a public hearing on Wednesday, October 23rd at 9 a.m. at the Ann Basker Auditorium. I believe I got all that information right.
Say it again.
You can rewind on YouTube, right? This isn't your last shot.
Sorry.
Yeah. I also it's kind of like when someone like leaves you a voicemail and then they say out their whole number and then they're like, just one more time for you, and they say the whole number. It's like, I have caller ID. You're fine. Just say.
Fair.
Yeah. But yeah. So anyways, if anybody wants to check that out, they can weigh in on that. The commissioners are interested in hearing the public's opinion on it. They want to. It sounds like Herman was telling me that they would like to get it approved, and so they want it to be, they want the public to be involved so that it has a good chance.
What's Herman's last name, just so people know?
Bershedediger. Yeah, just throwing a couple extra vowels and say it with confidence.
Don't let Luke
I'll be sure to ask him next time.
We'll get a pronunciation and put it on the screen.
I think it's Bart Sugar, right?
I think you should text him and ask.
Bart
or
Sugar
call
sounds
or
like
email.
like an ethnic dance. It's like
Yeah.
we do the
Page.
Bart Sugar.
Do the Bart Sugar.
Yeah. I'll have to ask him about what the.
I want to know what's his
Jewish? Maybe it's-
what's
it
his
sounds
favorite. I want to know what's his favorite mispronunciation that he's heard.
Well, I mean, if he watched our podcast, we heard you call him bird shitter. So
Allegedly.
allegedly,
He probably
on
got
tape.
it in middle school.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, if anybody wants to check that out, they can go listen to the public hearing. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see if we get the fire district in the area. If you're paying for rural metro, it sounds like you'll at least get a little bit of a savings out of it.
Would this just be for county though? It wouldn't apply to city.
Well, there's different areas in the county that it sounds like already have their own fire districts.
That's true.
And so
There used to be a Merlin fire district, didn't there? You live out there.
one, like you said, in the Applegate. They
Oh, I
kinda
just
got
doxed
one.
you. Oh no.
Yeah.
only for a couple of years. I think there may have been. Not positive.
You can edit
Okay.
it out.
Yeah, but anyway, so if anybody's interested in that, they can check it out. But I think we could move on to
Well,
the homeless
before we
thing.
move on
Yeah.
to that, wasn't there a segment you wanted to do?
Do you want to save it for later?
We'll save it for after homeless. It'll be a good ender, I think.
Okay, that sounds good.
Stay tuned.
Okay, so let's move on to the homeless issue. So basically, for the past few years, we had a lot of homeless guys camping in the parks and just kind of wherever. And we had that ongoing Supreme Court case where apparently the homeless guys put enough cans in the machine that they were able to afford a lawyer. And
God, that was offensive.
I don't know how they did it. I just don't know.
It wasn't called Johnson versus.
Yeah, it was Johnson versus the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
If someone could do the math on how many
Or
cans it takes.
Johnson versus
I'm
the
sorry,
city, the Josephine County, and then went to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, they had a representative
Yeah.
for their rights.
Yeah. So, anyways, listen. So they had that course case, and they ruled in favor of Grants Pass, and so Grants Pass is now able to designate specific areas for homeless. They're allowed to remove homeless from public spaces.
They were
like
allowed
parks.
to start removing them from public parks, but the fallback from that is now they have to provide actual places for them to go.
Yes.
Was that part of the ruling, or
It was
just like-
something like a reasonable option
Okay.
is what they had to provide.
Yeah.
Which
Well-
I feel like a lot of the big jump in homelessness started after those big fires a couple of years ago in like 2020.
Which was also around the same time as COVID.
Yeah.
And also around the same time as drug decriminalization with Measure
Yep.
110.
And it would be
And then
interesting to
they
see
just
if
never,
those-
the homeless numbers just never went down.
It never went down after
I feel
that.
like a lot of people that were homeless because of the fires ended up getting places.
Yep.
Some of them, I think, still
Some
stay
might,
homeless.
yeah.
To be fair, though,
But-
we've had a homeless issue in Josephine County for a while.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but it's definitely
It's gotten worse.
It would
It's
be
gotten
interesting. It's gotten worse, and
Way
it'd be
worse.
interesting to see it,
Well,
the
Grant-
numbers after those events. You know?
Yeah, Grants Pass is, I think, known before the court ruling for being pretty lax on these things. So you get homeless people coming from different counties, different towns, and even different states that come stay here.
It's a great place
because
to be
it's the
homeless.
climate.
It literally
Try
is.
it sometime.
Grants
You should put
Pass,
that on the sign.
Grants Pass doesn't have super hot summers and does not have super cold or snowy winters.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, if you are staying outside,
It's the climate.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 112 degrees ain't nothing.
Well, and the thing is, it's like, oh gosh, yeah, that was rough.
It's not consistently hot.
Yeah.
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 That's probably why my Pacific Power bill was so high. No, and so the thing is like, despite the jokes and stuff, it's like you really do have this moral ethics problem, right? Of you want to show compassion, but you also don't want to enable, and that's kind of why I was calling it earlier. It's really a compassion versus an enablement argument. It's like, what can we do to show compassion on people who are in a really difficult situation without basically just pouring money into something that is going to enable, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, you don't
So,
want to you don't want to feed a fire, but you also don't want to abandon the people that actually would want help.
Can I say something potentially controversial
Please.
and
Absolutely.
represents my opinion?
The
not
Oregon grape, uncensored.
Yeah. People's attitude towards homelessness, for me personally, I feel like is a really good litmus test of like how serious they actually are about issues. Because homeless is one of those things that almost every town struggles with. Everyone knows about. It's in the public. It's apparent. And it's like very obvious these people are struggling. However, whether or not it really affects the day-to-day use or day-to-day lives of normal people, as far as typical homelessness, this is a little different. I feel like when people are asked questions related to like, well, what do you feel strongly on? Homelessness is one of those things that is like, it's the Sunday school answer that people just like give out. Like, oh, what do you thinking about getting a charity? What are you going to do? Oh, I think maybe, I don't know, homeless outreach or something. Because it's something that most people agree needs to be worked on.
Yeah,
and like,
it's a
you can
problem.
feel good about yourself and you can look good to other people. And you don't ever have to really do anything because, like, no, I'm serious. It's like one of those things people say when they're not really.
Like, are you talking about like political candidates?
Yeah, like political candidates. Oh, I really want to help
tackle
out
the homelessness issue.
Homelessness, and that's like it's like a buzzword.
My thoughts on it are that I have lived here 25 years, my whole life, and I'm raising my kids here. And I didn't used to have to be so concerned about if I were walking downtown that, someone's going to like potentially make me or my wife or my kids feel unsafe. And maybe it's just part of growing up, but I really do feel like the amount of homeless people has increased in our county. I also feel like there's plenty of evidence that is going to come out, and it has already started coming out, that with these homeless camps, the areas where they've been condensing the unhoused people are getting riddled with crime. And the businesses in those surrounding areas are getting hit, and the residential areas in those surrounding areas are getting hit.
Do you think it's actually worse, though? Because those businesses still had people camping outside of their
If you look
place.
at the criminal records of the homeless population, it is very high. And then you think about where are you going to commit crime if you don't have transportation? It's wherever's within walking distance. And think about when you condense those people together and now they can conspire and go, hey, watch my back, I'm going to go grab what's in that person's car. It's like it doesn't take a genius to go, if I put all of these people with a criminal background in this one area, say it's only 55 to 60% of them, that's still way higher than the normal population. So you have these people with a pretty high criminal background all condensed in one area, and the businesses that are in those areas are going to get hit. Doesn't that make sense? I mean, that's how I see it.
Yeah, I just don't understand if, even if they weren't in the encampment, wouldn't that crime just be dispersed throughout the city?
I think it was dispersed throughout the city. And now, I mean, I don't know if it's a benefit to have them all in one area.
Yeah, but now it's like, I mean, every one of these encampments is in walking distance of each other because it's not a big city.
Yeah, you could
But
walk.
I have two that are within very short walking distances from my neighborhood where I live. That's a little bit different than people staying in like Winco or Walmart's parking lot.
Yeah. Well, and then you have the cases of so even say it is a good solution, because I'm all for having them not be in the parks. I think that actually is a good idea to move them out of the parks. Parks were not built for people to live in tents and for it to be disgusting. And it's one of those things that it makes me sad if I wanted to take my wife and kids to a park. There's 1 to 2 parks I can choose from where I know they're not going to deal with homeless. And it's one of those things where one of those parks you have to pay to be there. And when I went down to Stockton, California, we went to a local skate park with a playground and stuff, right? And there was just glass and needles and all this nasty stuff everywhere. And I was literally driving around Stockton with Google Maps, where can I go that's a safe place for my family to go and be? There's tons of taxpayer money into these beautiful parks that are just trashed. And there's literally shopping carts on fire underneath bridges, black smoke billowing out. It sounds dramatic, but that's what I saw down there.
The dead bodies. I'm just, the parks here in town, there have been kids that have been playing on the playground and found OD'd bodies in the bushes.
Oh,
yeah.
gosh.
Some guy walked up to a playground earlier this year and shot himself in the head in front of all the kids.
So definitely good that they're not in the parks, right? And I say they're them. I just mean people who are unhoused. I know that not all of them are bad people or making bad decisions, but there is probably a higher percentage of them than not that are on drugs, highly addicted to alcohol, and also struggling with mental illness. And when I was in California, the only place I could find was a zoo that you had to pay to go into. And it's one of those, our taxpayer money has already paid for parks. I know mine not in California, but in California, their taxpayer money has paid for those parks. You should get the use out of them that they were built for. And I think it's the same with a place like Riverside Park. It has a disc golf course. You should be able to play disc golf there and not hit a tent.
Well, and that's kind of one of the points that I was making when I was looking at I was reading an article on how the Medford City Council has been dealing with their homelessness issue, and they're honestly, it sounds like they're much more strict than us, because they have a large portion of their city area that you're just not allowed to camp in. You're just not allowed to. It's an offense. You get arrested.
They used to have some pretty big tent cities that were surrounding Bear Creek Park and some other areas. That was years ago. I think they've taken them out.
So the other thing that Medford is doing is that they have this ordinance where if you commit certain types of misdemeanors or crimes, things like disturbing the peace, fighting, drug crimes, that sort of thing, you actually get kicked out of the
shelters.
City. Yeah, no, you get kicked out of the city for 90 days, and you're not allowed back in. And there's
that
a
seems
few
hard to enforce.
It's interesting, but it's there's a few. exclusions for it. If you have to go to like a public meeting or something, you're allowed to do that. But you're basically kicked out of the
Outcasted.
you're
Voted
outcasted
off
from
the
the
island.
city for 90 days, right? And voted off the island. Yeah.
Sorry.
Look, I think this is already going to be a very controversial and divisive episode.
Probably.
So I would like to make it very clear for viewers, like these are obviously people.
Yep.
And we're talking about this because we care not only about the citizens in the community, we do care about these people in the camps.
Yeah.
I don't personally blame the city for these camps. After the ruling in the Supreme Court, they kind of had no other option.
Yeah.
I just don't want this to be long term.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are better ideas. The idea of just completely prohibiting camping at all in the city, I think, is a much better idea.
Well, you know,
If they want to set up these campgrounds outside of city bounds, I mean, Grants Pass, our economy is mostly fueled by tourism. Having these things that look like concentration camps up and down is not a good look.
Yeah.
So, you know what's interesting is when you talk about basically like human rights, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, in a way, you have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And just because you're homeless doesn't necessarily mean that you lose those rights. And so, in a weird way, the way that the Medford City Council is dealing it is sort of freedom mindset, because you do have the right to exist, right? But in the city, these sidewalks, these roads, these parks, these have been paid for by taxpayers, which means that there should be basically taxpayers should have a say in how the areas are used, right? And so if you're at the time not a person who is contributing to funding those areas, then in a way you don't necessarily have a right to them. And so the way that Medford City Council has been dealing with it by saying, hey, you can't camp in the city, you can go camp somewhere else, right? It kind of makes sense, you know. Like as an individual, you have a right to go camp in the woods, you know. Yeah, go find some BLM land, right?
You have
to go right to go camp there. But
There
it
are
does
already
make
big
sense.
communities, homeless people.
Oh yeah. But it does make sense to be like, hey, these spaces have been paid for by taxpayers, and the taxpayers should have a say in how the spaces are used, and we don't want people camping there because it brings crime, it brings drugs, it brings an unsafe environment.
I will say it was pretty strategic, the areas that they've chosen. Maybe not perfect, definitely not perfect, but the areas that they've chosen have been kind of strategic. If you look at where they've put these camps, it does seem like, more industrial districts where it's not really like they're right next to people's houses.
Well, because they had proposed these ideas, I think, long before the Supreme Court decision, and there was a lot of pushback because they wanted to put these in neighborhoods.
Yeah, and that's a pretty bad idea. So one thing I wanted to read was a quote from Councilor Brian DeLagrange, and he basically said, "There's no perfect plan. We're just doing the best we can." Yeah, there's no perfect plan. We're just doing the best we can.
Silence your cell phones,
There's
guys.
no
Come
perfect
on,
plan.
We're recording.
I'm going to restart. There's no perfect plan. We're just doing the best we can. No matter what we do, no matter where we cite these things, there's going to be people that are upset. This is just a starting point. We plan to adjust.
Honestly, that's a really true viewpoint on the homeless thing. Is it's like, because you're battling compassion versus practicality, you're always going to upset people.
Yeah, because there's someone who's been, robbed by a homeless person, or they've experienced them stealing, whatever it is, right? And then there's someone who it's like, no, my nephew is homeless, and I experienced him going through being abused by his parents, having no other place to go, and then he took to the streets, and that's his lifestyle now. And it's like, there's going to be people who have seen it from both sides, and our different life experiences really change how we view those people groups and the situation.
Which obviously not all homeless people are criminals.
No.
Which is why it's also a problem to group them all together, because not only does it create a concentration of crime in that area of the city, but in those camps, and so it's not really a safe place to send people to.
No.
Yeah, I
because
learned
you're
how to
just as
make,
likely to get stabbed while you're in there.
Yeah, I learned how to make my first shiv by visiting one of those homeless camps. So.
Well, okay, here's one way to think about it. Is it a place where you would send a family member? No, it's not. I mean, I can't picture allowing a family member to be there, right? And so then you think about it and you go, okay, where are these people's families? Why are those family ties ruined? A certain amount of them, it's going to be they don't have family. They were a foster kid. They were an orphan. There's cases where it's definitely not their fault. And then there's the cases that I know of many people who have experienced this, where it's like, oh yeah, they started doing meth. They stole from their family. They ruined their family relationships, and their family will not take them in. They will not help them. The only place they have to go is homeless.
There's another side of that too, where they oftentimes don't want to go back to their family because it means that they won't be able to continue using. Yeah. So, and that's the thing too, is that you cannot talk about homelessness without talking about drug addiction.
Yep.
And I believe you looked up a number that said that about 2/3 of homeless in America reported to using illegal substances.
Hard narcotics.
Yeah. Apparently, the chair for the Josephine County Republican Party, Holly Morton, she said that in Josephine County is closer to 90%. I did not check that number, but it seems, based on what I see right here by the train tracks every day, I have not seen a homeless person that did not visibly look like they had been using drugs.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's accurate if it's any substance.
And I think the real question is, are these people who are homeless because of drugs? How many is that? And how many are homeless and then got into drugs?
Well, either case, how do you get them off of drugs to where they can then have a purpose in life or some sense of fulfillment or a direction? Because I really think it's a vision problem. They don't have a vision of getting out of that lifestyle. We've talked about, and maybe this is something the viewers can tell us if they would want to see, we've talked about doing a man on the street style interview and going to one of these homeless encampments and just talking to people and saying, hey, what's your story? How'd you get here? How could someone help you get out? And I think that would be a great way to find out from just a couple anecdotal experiences. Where are people in those camps? How do they feel about them? And really, I mean, I've talked to multiple homeless people. Typically, I'm a pretty talkative guy. If you stop me while I'm walking down the street and say, hey, can you help me with this? There was this guy who wanted me to give him money so he could get some cleanse drink so he could go to the Gospel Rescue Mission so it wouldn't show that he used meth yesterday. And I was telling him, I'm like, that's a moral issue for me. You'd be lying. And he's like, come on, man. I'm trying to get in there. I'm trying to get clean. And I was like, just wait a day for it to be out of your system if the rule is that you couldn't use. Anyways, so I'll talk with these people. I'll go through their issues with them. Some of them, it's that they can't get a birth certificate. They can't get proof of address, so they can't get a job. It's like we have to set up areas for the resources for them to get out, for the people who want to get out, but then really discourage people who want to stay in the drug use lifestyle. Make it really hard for them to be drug users. Like we should probably crack down on that.
We have organizations that work with the homelessness. A lot of them, I feel like, are a little enabling, doing things like handing out tinfoil and crack pipes in syringes.
Terrible. How does that help anyone?
I understand the reasoning.
They're sterile.
Which is like,
they're sterile?
Yeah, they're sterile.
God. Die clean.
Yeah, like if they're going to do it, they might as well do it clean. But like we should just be like...
to what end? Sorry, I have to ask. To what end? So they can use drugs until the drugs kill them? So that they can be like more of a... Like I don't get what the long-term end is of giving somebody a clean way to use their drugs, unless it is weaning them off so that they don't go into withdrawal. Like I don't see the long-term thought with that. It's a very short-term solution of, they're not going to die from HIV today, It's not a solution. It's a really sad...
This whole situation, the sites that we've put them in or put out for them, it's all supposed to be short-term. And it doesn't seem like anyone's thinking about the long-term solution because you can't just ship them out on buses out of town.
Why do you say it was short-term? Is that something they talked about? They talked about being
very much
a temporary issue?
Very much so. Yeah, this is a starting point. We plan to adjust. I think it was...
They also plan on building more of these.
Yeah, and right now it's said to cost the taxpayer $250,000 a year. And I feel like that's probably a low estimate just because, already it's been like, having someone clean out the porta potties 4 times a day isn't enough. They need to do it more. And they need potable water and they need a shelter and they need, it's like things are going to get added.
How often are they using these porta potties?
That's what I said to Eddie. He said they're going to clean out 4 times a day.
That's what I was told, was 4 times a day.
And I just think it's like, maybe
if
that's
you see
someone
service
memeing,
4
but
times a day.
That's crazy because it just makes you go, okay.
Well, they're not starving.
Well, it's like they're not supposed to be fun campsites.
No,
they're not supposed to be.
They don't have cornhole.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be something that you want to stay in long term. But it should still be humane. I think
of course,
potable drinking water is a great idea.
I do too. But it's going to cost the taxpayer money. And then the other thing I was going to say is Councilor Dwayne Yunker said, we don't need to be told that you don't want them in your area. We're trying to fix this the best we can. I don't want them either, but they're human beings. We got to do something. And that goes to what Andy was saying with it being like a Band-Aid, a temporary fix. We're going to do something. It's not the long-term solution.
The fact of the matter is, the majority of them that, are on drugs, it's very hard to help people that don't want to be helped.
Yes.
Well, and that's the thing is when you come into kind of like I was calling it like the compassion versus enablement, and it's sort of like most good people have compassion on someone in a difficult situation, but you also have to, for one, you have to have compassion on who might be a victim. You have to worry about the secondary victims, like the person who had their business robbed because they were next to one of these encampments, right? So you have to have a compassion that is all-encompassing and is actually based on truth and actual problem solving, right?
Yeah.
And so the question kind of becomes like, how do you help someone who doesn't want to be helped,
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff like handing out clean needles, it's like, are you enabling?
Mm-hmm.
And so the Gospel Rescue Mission gets a lot of flack, and it's because they're very strict. You cannot smoke, you cannot drink, and obviously you can't be using any illegal substances. And the thing is, in a way, that's very reasonable. You know?
They also require you to go to Bible studies, which I feel is a little too far.
I feel like that's a little too far.
However,
mostly because,
if you're really struggling and you really need it and there's nowhere else to go, and they're the only option, they're the only ones trying to help.
Yeah, I see how they get there, though, because they see the value in putting your faith in a higher power. If you're able to transform someone's life in that way, it could be the very thing that saves their life to where they're not doing drugs anymore, because they see there's a reason. So I get the reason behind it, but I'm with you. I don't think it should ever be a requirement for someone to put their faith in God in order to be helped. It should be
not a requirement to be helped. Yeah.
It should definitely be.
The thing is it does work. The Gospel
it does
Rescue
work.
Mission does help a lot of people.
Yeah, as far as and the thing is, I think they have like over 100 beds, and only like 40 to 60 are ever filled. Like
That's
they
crazy.
always have room.
I would want to learn more about that. I wonder if we could reach out to someone at the Gospel Rescue Mission to talk.
It'd be great to do one of our, how we're talking about doing man on the street interviews. We could go do a tour. We could ask them if we could go tour as the Oregon Grape.
I think we should also interview private citizens about their thoughts on these camps.
Great idea.
Absolutely.
As far as like the enabling without the giving out the drug paraphernalia,
or
think
money.
about it this way: if your brother was a drug addict, would you give him those things?
No,
absolutely not.
No. If my brother was a drug addict, he's sitting right here, I wouldn't give him 50 cents.
Not a drug addict, by the way.
Not a drug addict.
Yeah.
Doesn't even drink coffee. Only probiotic drinks.
He's addicted to loving.
He is. And it's one of those things that you just go, that's a great perspective to put it in. If it was your brother, if it was your wife, your cousin, your nephew, whatever relation, you wouldn't. This is the thing, and everyone would handle it differently, but if you know there's a 95% chance they're going to use the money you give them to go buy drugs that are going to harm them, that's not compassion. Just because they're telling you, just because they have a gas can and a cardboard sign, somehow they always have cardboard signs and Sharpies and gas cans. Gas cans are like $25. Yeah. It's one of those things that
if you're really homeless,
it's just reality. It's like I've seen the guy walk from his bike with the gas can and say, like, I've seen you. Please tell your experience you had at the grocery outlet.
Well, the guy who attacked me, or
no,
wanted to attack me, or
no. Eli has multiple homeless man stories. They're very good. No, the guy who's like, please $100.
Writing a book on it.
Yeah, please $100. Me and my wife. You remember that one? He's like, please, if you could just give me this money, and then you walk outside, and he was doing the same thing again the next day or something like that.
Oh yeah, I saw the same guy. I don't know if he was gay. He had a wife.
Yes.
And I think he was Arabic or something. So in his country, not
gay.
They don't support it. But yeah, his wife approached me once, and she was asking for money, saying that they were trying to like get out of town or something, or they're trying to move up somewhere. And she had some story about how her husband was gone or something like that. Like he is living in a different state. And then the next day I see her with her husband. And her husband is trying to ask me for money because he didn't know that she had already asked me.
She had
for
already
money.
scammed you.
Yeah,
Bamboozled.
and it
Bamboozled.
was crazy. I had a story of a guy who said that he needed money to go up to his dying father in Portland, and I ended up giving him money, and he said that he just needed money to get up there, and he was going to pay me back once you get up there. And I was like, whatever, you don't have to pay me back. But he like gave me his phone number, and he was like, call me, I'll like pay you back or whatever. And obviously never heard from him again.
Of course.
But
Did you
it's
call
like,
him?
yeah.
Look,
I think I tried to call him. Yeah.
This is another one of my probably controversial statements. I have never met a legitimately homeless person that was in need that sat on the side of the road with a cardboard sign. I have seen those people get up out of a wheelchair and walk to their car.
Yeah, I saw a guy pushing an electric wheelchair the other day. I was like, that looks heavy. Poor guy.
Yeah, but like, dude, this is one of those performative things where you see a guy with the sign, you give him the $5, you feel better about yourself.
You feel better about yourself.
And you go about your day.
I think everyone knows it. I think everyone knows when you give that guy, and I give food because I feel like, okay, even if you're trying to scam me, food's not going to harm you. I can even pray for you while I give you the food. It can be a good experience, and that's not going to be something I can't give money. I can't. You're going to use it for drugs. You're going to use it. It could harm somebody.
I'm saying is there are homeless people that ask for money and ask for food. The ones that are always sitting at the intersections with the cardboard signs.
Yeah.
I think most of those are not homeless, or they're working together in a group to get money.
Yeah, there's a pimp that drives them around
on a street corner once. I made a cool $200. Yep. You got to dress the part.
That's terrible.
And you got to smell the part, because if they don't get that wafting in the car window, they're like, hey, you know?
You're wearing Versace. I can't give you a $5. Yeah. No, but okay. So on the homeless camp thing, if you guys were to think about it, so say we know it's bad for them to be in the parks, right? We know that Riverside Park is better off being a playground for kids as it was intended to be.
And also used for community events.
Yeah, and also used for, Boatnik or different things. And it's weird because they used to remove them for Boatnik, and then
People had weddings there.
people, Well, and that's the thing. I know of people, who got married at Riverside Park like a decade ago.
I want to quickly shout out. There's a group, and I'm totally blanking on the name. It's mostly older folks that go to these parks and clean them up. And they've been doing this for the last couple months, maybe over a year. I don't know how long they've been doing it, but ever since the whole thing started with the homeless in the parks, and even now after they've kicked them out, this group of people that are volunteer, this is their own thing, have been going through and cleaning out these parks.
That's beautiful.
Is it the Park Watch people? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
Shout out
I've,
Park Watch.
Yeah, I've helped put on events, and they've been there volunteering in all these events. So
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I love that. I love that. The community needs more of that. And but okay, so if we know it's bad for them to be in the parks and they need to be moved, I get where the city council and the state representatives and the commissioners, I get where leadership is coming from on this. It's like, we don't have, where are we going to put them? You could put it to a vote. You could have different areas. I don't know if they have at these different meetings, but it's like, you have to move them somewhere. And then right now, I believe they only have some places. I've read so many different things. It's like sometimes they're saying you can only stay there for 24 hours, and then you have to move to another one. And then others, it's saying you can be there for a week. I think somewhere, maybe Andy read 90 days or something like that. But it's like, depending on where you're at, you can only be there so long, and then you have to move. It's everything about it screams temporary situation, temporary fix, Band-Aid.
I do want to move on from the homeless thing pretty soon here, but Eddie, you wanted to talk about one more thing about kind of the placement of these camps.
Yeah, so one of the placements of these camps that they're currently using is right behind Copeland. I think it's Rock and Stone.
It's Ready Mix, yeah.
Copeland,
Riverside Ready Mix, and then Copeland, their landscaping, sand and gravel sort of areas right there.
It is. So the city actually took that land from Copeland through eminent domain. It's been in the paper, but we have not discussed it here. And their reasoning for taking this land from Copeland through eminent domain was because they needed to put a water treatment plant there, and it absolutely needed to go there. Couldn't go anywhere else. Even though Copeland gave them another option, like, hey, instead of taking this land, why don't you just use that land? We're not even using it. And they said, no, it needs to be on this land. And they ended up putting up the homeless camp there. So, did you really need that land?
Bad luck.
I think I read something that the plans for the water treatment plant are still in effect for 2025.
Well, I guess they did say that this is a temporary thing, so they're probably still planning to use it
So
for it.
then-
That is interesting, though. It is kind of a little...
That
They
it
only
had
have-
to be that place. And
It's
only
just
that place.
convenient that they got that land, because they were, I know from what people at Copeland have said, that they were in talks with the city about buying it, the city buying it from them, and they were kind of unsure, and they were in a lot of talks, and then immediately overnight the city just changed their mind and just took the land.
Well, and it makes you think like, okay, if this is a temporary fix like that, homeless encampment is going to now there's a deadline on it. If they have to build a water treatment plant there, I mean, and it's starting in 2025, that's so weird to think about. That's just a couple months away.
Yeah.
3 months and it's going to be 2025.
Yeah, it's
Crazy.
trippy. Yeah, wasn't the world supposed to end like 3 times by now?
God, 15 at least.
I'm getting tired of all
Yeah.
that, you know.
Can I switch subjects to
It's gonna
someone's
happen, let it happen, you know.
someone's world did end back in the 1800s. Can I take you to a history segment with Luke?
That's good. All right, let's hear it.
So this is just a little fun tidbit. Each podcast, I'm trying to do a little bit of history segment on something that happened.
We're gonna
in
have
Oregon.
a hard time topping exploding whales for quite a while.
Yeah, no,
you shouldn't
the
have
people
set the
love
bar
it.
so high, man.
Whales
And
don't explode very often.
What was
They
that
don't.
comment we got where they were like less politics, more exploding whales?
Yeah.
Like, listen, there's only the one event. Okay?
We're gonna
We
make that
can't-
a T-shirt. Less politics,
That'd be
more
great.
exploding whales.
We're gonna have to go explode our own whale now.
Yeah, for just for good measure to make sure it still dents cars' roofs. Yeah, when the blubber falls. If you didn't see that, go back and watch our first episode. Okay, so grave robbers tried to hold a former Portland mayor's corpse for ransom, but they made a big mistake. So basically,
For ransom?
For ransom. So
We have the body. What are you gonna do with it?
he's
Well,
already
nothing.
dead.
We're gonna weaken at Bernie's him.
Okay, so this is a great story. This is back in let's see, 1893. Is when this guy William Sergeant Ladd died. He was one of
1893.
1893.
Over 100 years ago.
Yeah. So
Back
this
in the
guy,
day.
this
I
guy
didn't see
was like mega wealthy. He is basically he developed the city of Portland
He had
in the
a whole
1800s.
$40.
What was mega wealthy in 1893? Like, did he have like
I'll
20
tell you.
animal pelts in his closet? Like,
I'll tell you. In today's standards, it would be anywhere from 150 to 250 million.
okay.
That is
So,
quite a
more
bit
money than
I do have.
all of us combined plus 250 million.
Yeah. That's more than the county's entire budget.
Yeah, there you go.
He could have bought Josephine County.
He could have bought Josephine County, and he did found Portland's first bank. He was an entrepreneur. He became involved with everything: manufacturing, transportation, railroads. He invested in everything.
Can I see that picture of him?
Yeah, this guy. He there's old William Sergeant
and
Ladd.
show
Oh
it
yeah,
to
we're
the
gonna
camera.
overlay a picture of that with the beard.
Yeah,
That's
Oh
a
yeah,
good
he's
look.
a handsome lad.
he is
Even
a handsome
the beards
lad.
were manlier back then.
Fun fact: my initials are Ladd. He spells it with 2 D's though. Anyways, so
Cool, great fun fact, man.
so he died, right? He died at 66. And this is where the story gets interesting. So there was a man who basically, his name was Daniel Mangon. Interesting last name.
There was
he
a man
wanted
gone.
He wanted a man gone. Yeah. He lost his property in the 1890s during the economic depression, and he witnessed his young daughter drown in the Willamette River.
Whoa.
River. And it sent him spiraling into like this deep manic depression, and it got a little bit crazy. And he decided he was going to make his money back by stealing William Ladd's body and holding it for ransom for $50,000.
Can you put up a picture of this guy too?
Yes.
Was that a lot back then?
Him and his wife.
Yeah, we'll get a picture of that guy up there.
Man,
Did
if
his
I-
wife
Henrietta.
help?
Everyone
Did his wife
back-
help?
No,
You know, back in the 1890s, they're pretty mean to women. He probably
Yeah.
made her dig the hole, you know?
Hey, fun fact, Josephine County is the only county in Oregon named after a woman.
Interesting.
Yeah, we did find that out.
So,
earlier.
yeah, we did. So basically, good old Daniel Mangon tried to make a man gone by stealing his dead body from a cemetery. And he figured out he couldn't really do it on his own. So he hired a couple guys to help him with it.
As one does when they're robbing a grave. You
Yeah.
know?
it was a pretty
You know,
popular.
nowadays I
occupation back
see ads
then.
like that on Indeed all the time.
Yeah, need
Yeah.
2 henchmen. So,
Two henchmen
so-
okay with crimes.
Yeah. So the three men, they dug up William Ladd at one cemetery, went to another cemetery and dug up a different body and swapped it and hid it. Okay. It's such a good story. I love this. So then it didn't go too smoothly when they tried to do the getaway. They started researching.
Because they were in a horse and carriage.
Dude, no, before the guy could even like really fully ask
It's a
for the
high-speed chase of 12 miles per hour. Where's the coconuts?
Basically, before he could even really ask for the ransom money, they found his custom forged knife at the first dig site.
Oh, rookie
They
mistake.
they went to the guy who made the knife because it was like custom. It was hand forged. And they went and they're like, whose knife is this? And he's like, that's Daniel Mangon's knife. And so then they went and they interrogated the other two guys, the henchmen who he hired off Indeed or whatever Indeed was back in the day. And they ratted him out like right away. They were like, yeah, dude, Daniel's crazy. He wanted us to dig up this body and bury it at this other cemetery. Here's where it is.
He hired us and we asked no questions.
Yeah, right. So
He said it's his knife and we have a man gone.
yeah. So then he was arrested, went on trial. He never carried out the rest of his ransoming scheme. He tried pleading insanity, but the journey was like,
Don't
nah,
you
dude.
just hate that when you can't even get
Only
your
women
ransom
did it
scheme
back
off
then.
the ground?
Yeah.
That's such a
He's just-
or out of the ground, depending on
The old, drop your knife fallacy. So once they got the body back, they put it back in the casket, which was probably a good idea. And this is the kicker. This is my favorite part of the story. They reburied him and surrounded it in concrete
What does that mean?
because they're like, no one's stealing this body again.
Well, if he became a zombie, he would.
I was so excited for a second.
Awesome.
I thought you were going to say the body exploded because they do that sometimes.
They put a bunch of C4 in it on the beach.
Did they?
Hey, you know what that means, man?
Huh.
That means he's still there.
He's still there, surrounded
Yeah.
in concrete.
Did it say if they replaced the other body and put it back in his grave? Or
I don't know. No,
He wasn't.
they just put him
how it
next to him?
describes it is that they went from one grave site to another, and they dug and reburied.
Maybe we should
So
try
I
to
don't know if
get
they
his
swapped the
ancestor on
bodies.
the podcast.
That'd be a lot
Yeah,
of
we should
travel.
find the great-great-grand
Does it say
son
the
of
graveyard?
Mangon and just
Yeah.
be like, listen, how do you feel about this? This is your family history.
Yeah. Are you insane as well?
Yeah.
That could be
How's
our
his
first
wife
Well, this
Henrietta?
might be a great way to fund the podcast because if we go steal that body, it's got to be worth even more, because of
50
like
grand.
Historical
inflation.
significance.
Yeah.
Luke has an excavator.
We could make it happen.
We can make that happen.
I don't have a
Easy.
CDL to trailer it, but I know a guy.
Where's this guy from?
This was in Portland. Yeah.
It's in Portland.
Dude, crazy stuff
They
happens in
would
Portland.
not care if we were digging up a grave
Even
there.
back
They
in
got
the
their own problems.
1800s, crazy stuff was happening in Portland, is what I'm figuring out.
Yeah, well, that really honestly explains a lot more about Portland as the city it is today.
The guy who founded it got his body stolen,
yeah, wow, by a guy named Mangon.
and now he's embalmed in concrete.
Yeah, that's really interesting because it's not often that the crime itself gives away the criminal. We have a man gone, and it was man gone.
It was man gone.
Yeah.
So when he pleaded insanity, they were like, "Nah, but your wife, probably."
because married to
poor
you,
Henrietta.
being married to you, that's gonna make anyone crazy.
Poor Henrietta Mangon. Yeah, so that's basically how it went. And join us next time for another history segment with
Yeah,
Luke.
that did not disappoint me. It wasn't quite as good as Exploding Whale. But
Yeah.
I
That was a
mean,
last.
Next time I'll bring
segment,
props.
So.
Yeah, yeah. If you could do a little puppet show with robbing the grave, that'd be
Just
really
have
helpful.
a man coming out, pouring cement.
That sounds great.
Cool.
Okay, I think that does it for this episode. Nice going, guys.
We'll see you next time.
So tune in this coming week. Don't clap yet. Don't clap. Stop. Okay. Tune
Yes,
in
master.
this coming week. Tune in this coming week. We're going to be interviewing Chris Barnett. Chris Barnett is a U.S. Air Force veteran. He is a radio personality. He's a business owner, and he's of course running for county commissioner. You'll get to hear a little bit about him, his history, as well as his plans for the county if he's elected. So make sure you tune in for that this coming week. More details to follow.
Sometimes I feel like we're your henchmen.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that because we have some bodies to dig up after this.
Is that wrong? Because he's kind of the leader of the podcast. So
I would
we're
rat
always
him out
listening.
so quick.
Yeah, that's why I don't ask you guys to come on my grave robbing schemes. I know I couldn't trust you. All right, thanks everyone
See you
for
next
tuning
time.
in.